Sited in northern Britain on the banks of the Humber estuary, the Alkborough Flats Tide Defence Scheme has evolved knocking a 20-metre wide breach into existing flood defences. This helps lower tide levels by allowing water from the estuary to run over the flats to create a massive flood storage area. The Environment Agency says it's been forced to breach the seawall by the onset of climate change, which is increasing tide levels. It says by taking this action, it's been able to reduce the risk of flooding for around 300,000 people.
The Humber itself has a very large tidal range at this point here. On the biggest tides we have a tidal range of about 7.5 metres between low and high water. The extreme height of that tide is altering every year because of sea level rise, and what we've seen over about 80 years is about 2 millimetres a year of increase. All the predictions are, because of climate change, that will increase and it may go up to as much as 12 millimetres a year. What that does is it puts increasing pressure on our defences around the Humber, and to try and relieve that pressure we've designed schemes like this one where we're allowing water out of the main channel of the estuary and into land that was formerly protected, and that acts as a bit of a safety valve and takes the pressure off the defences elsewhere.
The managed realignment of the site allows floodwater to spill out of the river at the highest tides to fill the neighbouring low-lying land. The capacity of the area is so great that the Environment Agency is predicting a 150 millimetre reduction in high tide levels over a large part of the upper estuary.
The Humber estuary is one of the largest estuaries in the UK. The land around it tends to be low-lying. About 90,000 hectares of land is below highest tide level, and 400,000 people live in that area and work in that area. The defences that we provide are essential for protecting those people and their property from extreme tidal events. The function of the scheme here is to reduce the height of extreme tidal events in the Humber, and it does that by allowing water out of the river during extreme events through the breach here and also over a section of the bank further along to fill the whole of the site. And when it does that, the high tide levels in the Humber are reduced by about 150 millimetres. The defence that we had here prior to last year, when the breach was formed, was made in the 1950s after the 1953 large tidal event that we had in the UK. The section of this defence was taken out just over a year ago, and its function is to allow water into the site during those very high tide events.
The Alkborough scheme cost over £10 million and is a fundamental part of the Environment Agency's long-term strategy for managing flood risk on the Humber estuary. More than £80 million will be spent on improving the area's flood defences in the next 5 years. Much of it spent on maintenance work on this vast open natural habitat.
We've got two issues on the Humber. One is that the defences that were built in the 1950s are by and large coming to the end of their lives now. The other problem we have is a long-term pattern of sea level rise. On the Humber we've got a long record of tide levels, and certainly for the last 80 years that we've got records for, tides have been going up by about 2 millimetres a year. With climate change that's predicted to get even faster, and tide levels will get higher and higher, and we need to do something about that. We can't always raise defences in all locations. In some places, like here, we've got to give land back to the estuary to allow space for the water to spread out.
Unlike existing man-made flood defence schemes such as the Thames Barrier, the Environment Agency decided to use the natural habitat to shape the Alkborough project.
It's a very different approach to the sort of things that have been done on other estuaries. We're lucky in some ways on the Humber in that there is land available for this type of approach. On the Thames, for example, I think it would be difficult to do this type of thing because the land isn't available. But on the Humber we can do that, and it is part of a wider package of trying to provide flood defences in a different way from the way we've done in the past.
The site is based on around 440 hectares of agricultural land, and it was local farmers who felt the first impact of the change in land use. But they're now benefiting from the scheme and have found new ways to supplement their incomes.
We've been very lucky on this site that about half of the site doesn't flood every day, so the farmers who were here before have been able to come back and do different things. So the farmers, for example, who used to grow crops here have come back and grazed the area. One of them's also very interested in tourist development, and he's got a campsite, caravan site and a tea room, which is done as a result of the scheme here and the people that the scheme's starting to attract.
Local farmer Anthony Ogg still works the land on the Alkborough site, but he's also diversifying his interests so that he doesn't just rely on agriculture to earn a living. He's built a tea room on his farm to provide facilities for visitors to the area, as well as a meeting place for the local community.
We're doing the cattle, the Limousin cattle, and we've got the grazing down the bottom since this flooding had come on, which helped us a fair bit, like sort of thing, fair bit of grazing. And we're diversifying because we've lost the land down the bottom, 200 acres, but we've also, well, we've got more land back now, but a lot of it's underwater. And we're going to concentrate on this tea room now and the cattle, and hope that we're getting a lot of walkers round to keep us going and keep the business going.
Since the seawall was breached in 2006, the scheme has also created a new intertidal habitat, attracting more species of wildfowl and wading birds into the area. Those behind the project hope it will continue to develop its huge potential as a haven for wildlife.
The site's been absolutely magnificent for wildlife. The Humber's an important estuary, particularly for overwintering birds, and the site's attracting many, many thousands of birds over the winter.
The Humber estuary forms a vital link in a chain of wetlands that stretch from the Arctic to the West African coast. These wetlands provide essential feeding sites for thousands of birds on their migration between their northerly breeding grounds and their winter feeding grounds. The long-term conservation of this important wildlife depends on the estuary being able to change and adapt to sea level rise.
The purpose of the site is first and foremost obviously for flood defence and to act as a flood storage area, but managed realignment sites are really important for the habitats that they can create as well. We're talking about things like mudflats and salt marsh, which over a number of years will start to develop here. But we're already attracting thousands and thousands of different birds, particularly over the autumn and the winter time, when the Humber estuary becomes a very important feeding ground for a lot of water birds. So we're talking about things like different types of duck, geese, and what we refer to as waders, so birds like lapwing and golden plover and curlew, which are fairly common birds on an estuary. And here, particularly, the site seems to be very important for golden plover. We're doing some monitoring work on site. We have had counts of up to 6,000 golden plover on site, which is a really fantastic sight when they're wheeling around over the site and you get glimpses of the golden plumage when it's a nice sunny day. So the site is becoming very important for those types of birds as well.
The site is being used as a demonstration project to help promote new approaches to the impacts of sea level rise across Europe. The Environment Agency says it can highlight the need for new strategies to help combat the effects of climate change.
It's got a life of probably 20 or 25 years, but what's going to happen is that if sea level continues to rise and the rate increases as predicted, we're going to need more and more areas like this. This won't provide us with a once and for all solution. It's part of a long-term strategy to keep protecting people, but we'll need more areas like this.
The Environment Agency says the Alkborough Flats scheme in providing flood defences and a new wildlife habitat for the Humber estuary offers a sustainable solution to help manage the challenges of global warming. It's part of their ongoing work around Britain to find new ways of protecting homes and businesses that are not only economically viable but also beneficial to the wildlife found around the UK's shores.